action. Good morning, this is Miss Beard doing the Challah demonstration. So I'm actually, for this demonstration, going to start out backwards. I have the dough already made, and I'm going to show you how to braid it before I show you how to make the actual dough, okay? And the purpose behind this is that I want you to be able to eat the challah today, okay, and get to try it, and it needs some time to bake. So this dough has already risen for about 60 minutes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, essentially, like you would a pretzel, roll it out into long strands. And I've separated the dough into 3 sections because this is a braided dough. Okay, so just like an Auntie Anne's pretzel, we're going to roll it, and I'm going to place it on my cookie sheet. Okay, I'm going to do that 3 different times. Okay, you want the rolls to be evenly distributed so the bread will cook evenly as well. Okay, so as evenly distributed as you can make them, okay? And you're actually going to braid it right on your cooking pan, okay? So I'm going to start kind of on one end. It doesn't matter what end you start on. You're going to kind of mold it together so that it holds together, and then you're going to braid it just like you would braid hair, really. Girls in here know what I'm talking about. Okay? Braid it just like you would braid hair, and then you're going to tuck it underneath, okay? And that is our loaf, okay? And we're actually going to coat it with an egg wash, okay? This is just an egg yolk with a little bit of cold water in it, okay? And I'm going to brush it on top. What does an egg wash do? Monte?
Doesn't it like glaze it?
It glazes it, makes it golden brown, it makes it shiny, and it just makes it look really nice on top, okay? And we're actually going to save one of our egg yolks for this step, which I'll show you when I make the actual bread. Okay, so once you have a very even glaze, I'm going to sprinkle it with a little bit of kosher salt on top, just to add a little bit of flavor to it. This is an optional step. I've also seen people sprinkle poppy seeds on top of it. Okay, and I'm going to put this in the oven. My oven is already preheated to 400 degrees, and this is going to bake for about 30 minutes. So we're going to stop it probably a little bit before 11, okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and fast forward, or rewind rather, to the making of the actual dough, okay? I'm going to start, and I'm going to be using a KitchenAid for making the dough today because it makes it a lot easier. And I'm going to talk about that a little more coming up here. So I'm going to start with 1 1/4 cup of flour. Okay, and if you want to follow me for this part on the recipe on the back of your sheet, you can. Okay, 1 1/4 cup of flour. Okay. Next, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar. And then 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. Okay. Now, when you measure something like salt, you always want to do it over something else so that you don't get extra salt in your dough. Okay. And then lastly, I'm going to add my yeast. Okay, it says 1 package of yeast. 1 package of yeast is equal to 2 1/2 teaspoons of fast rise or active dry yeast. And remember that yeast is a living organism. Okay, it's literally alive. It's just kind of sleeping in the, in your canister until you wake it up. What are we going to use to wake up our yeast? Hot water, yep. Lukewarm water, really. Okay? But first we're going to combine it with some margarine. Okay? And I'm going to cut this margarine in with a pastry blender. And then we're going to add the water after this step. Okay? So just like you would with biscuits, you're going to cut in your margarine until the margarine or the butter is in small pea-like pieces. Okay. It doesn't need to be quite as fine as if you were to do biscuits. The purpose of this step is to make it flaky and to give that bread that savory melt-in-your-mouth taste, which I know you want. Okay? So I'm going to hook up this KitchenAid. And this KitchenAid is going to do two different things for me. Okay? First of all, it's going to mix my ingredients, and then I'm going to use it to also knead my dough. Okay? So this is the first attachment. Okay? And I'm going to add slowly to this, okay, my hot water. Okay? I had a thermometer in here. This water is about 120 degrees. That's about the temperature range you want to be at to activate the yeast. Okay? I'm going to add it very slowly. Okay, and this is going to form a very wet dough. Okay, to this dough we're going to add a large amount of flour later on. Okay, while that's combining, I can go ahead and break my eggs. I'm going to add 3 eggs to this mixture. Okay, I'm going to break them in a custard cup first. Okay, 2 of the eggs I'm going to add whole. Okay, I'm going to add them one at a time to my mixture. Okay, and the eggs give challah that yellowish tint that you don't see in a lot of other breads. The other egg, I'm going to just add the egg white. Oops, maybe. Okay. How you can separate, that was a bad example of saturation, but you just kind of rock it back and forth. If you crack it right in the middle, it allows you to kind of hold on to the egg. You want to get rid of all the egg white that you can, including kind of that sticky part. Okay, and we're going to save the actual egg yolk for that top glaze that we put on the top of it. Okay, but I'm going to add this actual egg white to our mixture. Okay, while this is combining, I'm going to turn down a little bit. Our next step is to add enough flour to make a stiff dough. Okay, and this is where it's where making doughs gets kind of tricky. Okay, how many of you have made a bread successfully before? A couple of you, okay. Bread really isn't that hard, but the part about adding flour is where a lot of people get tricked up, okay? How much flour do you need? Well, it gives you a range of flour. And unless you've made bread before and really worked with it, it's hard to know how much to add. Our total amount of flour should be between 4.5 and 5.5 cups, but that just you want to make it into the correct feeling of the dough, okay? So I'm going to add this slowly, 1/4 of a cup by 1/4 of a cup, until I have a softish, firm dough. Okay, and the only way to really feel if it's done is to feel it. You can also scrape the edges as you go. I'm going to turn it up just a little bit. But mine's doing pretty well, so it's not sticking to the edges too much. If you add all the flour at once, it won't combine correctly, so you need to be very patient on this step. Okay, it's starting to pull away from my sides, which is a good thing. Okay, perfect. Okay. So it's started to pull away, which is what we want, okay? So for the next step, I'm going to knead my dough. And I'm going to show you how to do it in 2 different ways, okay? I'm going to put a little bit of flour down. kind of coat my hands in flour. Okay, and you can do this with the KitchenAid or you can do it by hand. I'm going to show you both ways, like I said. To do it by hand, essentially you're going to, you can also use an electric hand mixer for this. You don't need a KitchenAid. Okay. Essentially, I'm just turning it out and I'm going to knead it by hand. Okay, you want to coat it in a little bit of flour. That's why you should take it out when it's a softer dough. You should be able to touch it and not stick it to your hands. Okay, it will absorb some of that flour. Okay, when you knead something, you're developing what protein? What protein in wheat?
What?
Starts with a G?
Gluten.
Gluten, very good. Gluten is that very important protein that gives dough strength. You see how it's stretching? That's gluten. Okay, that's developing as we knead this dough. Okay, I'm going to let the KitchenAid do some of the work because according to the directions we would need to hand knead this for about 10 minutes. Okay, but we're going to take a shortcut, and the KitchenAid has a dough hook attachment that will allow you to knead it. It kneads it for you. Okay. And it would only take about 2 or 3 minutes in the KitchenAid to do it. Okay, so you can see it's doing the same action except it's doing it with the machine, and it's still developing that gluten, which is what we want. Yes? What if you knead it too much? Then the dough becomes tough, okay? If you've ever had a piece of bread that's just hard and it's not stale, that's why. It's just been working too hard. For this bread, we don't want to knead it too much because we want the challah to be soft, melt in your mouth bread. It's supposed to be really fresh bread. Okay, so I'm going to continue to let this knead. After it's done, I'm going to set it in a bowl and let it cover it with a warm cloth and let it rise for about an hour. Okay, and then for my next class, I'm going to show them the braiding steps, and we'll work backwards again. Okay, that's it.